I personally believe what you're about is different than what you do in your business. This is nuanced, but it's different. So what you're about has to do with what you care about, what matters to you. There is something that you've experienced in life that you didn't love, that you would love it if other people didn't have to experience that, right? And that drives what you're about in the world. It's Retreat and Grow Rich, the podcast. I'm Darla LeDoux, best-selling author, coach, and retreat leader, and I'm on a mission to normalize transformation on the planet, one intimate retreat at a time. This show's dedicated to the coaches, consultants, healers, leaders, and light workers who are here to hold space for the truth that transforms lives and get paid for it. Expert retreat and business tips, strategies, stories, and magic. It's your weekly mini retreat delivered right to your ears. Let's do this. Hi there, retreat leaders, aspiring retreat leaders, and lovers of transformation in all forms. Welcome to this episode, which I've entitled Owning Your Magic. And in the last episode, I went over the Retreat and Grow Rich business system, which is foundational to what I teach when I'm teaching retreat leaders how to create powerful, profitable retreats. And there's two sections to this system. The first is the foundational piece, which has to do with owning it and offering it. So regardless of what kind of service-based business you're in, what your vision is for your business, these things are so important. You have to be able to own it in terms of the work you're bringing forth into the world, and you need to be comfortable offering your services and asking for and receiving money. So when I work with my clients in our coaching programs, I want to make sure that they're really clear who they are, what they're about, what they actually do and why it matters. And that's the owning it piece that we're going to talk about today. So why own your magic? Why own your magic? I want to start with sharing a quote that I heard first from Larry Winget, who is a famous speaker and host of various shows. And he said this, and I wrote it down as quickly as I could. He said, "People will never listen to what you have to say or believe what you have to say, but they'll always listen for whether you believe what you have to say." And if you think about this, this is profoundly true, right? We may listen and take in information, but the truth is, before we receive any information from anyone, we're first checking for what I call alignment. We're checking that they believe what they're saying. And this is why owning it is so freaking important, right? If we aren't owning what we're saying, if we're not believing what's coming out of our mouths, then nobody else will either, right? It's kind of obvious when you think about it, but we walk through life and we don't stop to get clear, like really clear about the things that are most important to build a business on. And then all of a sudden people find themselves delivering business that they're not interested in, undercharging for their work because they're not fully valuing it. All kinds of craziness we can create in our business when we aren't owning it, when we're not really clear who we are, what we're about, what we do, and why it matters. So that's what this episode is about today. And I want to take you back to when I first started my business. And I didn't know much about business. I knew about business from working in the corporate world. I worked as a product development engineer out of college. I then left and taught high school, and I went back into corporate in marketing and brand development. And so I had a certain understanding of business, but the understanding of business I had was being paid to perform a specific function on a team. It was strategic and, I was leading teams and all of that, but I wasn't personally the product. I also had a very big budget to use and lots of resources to determine what product to offer, why we were offering it, and lots of people had to get consensus before we brought something to market. And so it wasn't just little old me, like out in the world offering something that was near and dear to my heart. So when I started in my business, I was very nervous. I had no concept of what it was to sell something that I had just created, that I had a vision for, that I knew in my heart made a difference, but wasn't necessarily broadly accepted as a role. Like I had to create this role. And I know if you've been there, you totally relate, and maybe you're there right now. And so one of the things that happened is I started to put together like my why for my business, and I knew it. And this is something, this is why my business is called Aligned Entrepreneurs. This is something I've always known deep down is like why I'm in business. And it's varied and waffled over the years, and we'll talk about that in a future episode. But from the beginning, I really knew that this work of transformation, this work of aligning with who you are, this work of understanding energy and who we're being in the world and how we show up, I knew that it mattered. So I had that going for me. But the thing that I didn't know is I didn't know, like, who was I to be the person to bring this message forward? Why would anybody pay me? In fact, why did it even make sense that I was doing this thing? I'm an engineer, I have this corporate pedigree. Like, who was going to believe me in this new world? And so one of the things that happened when I first started my business, I did what was advised, and I went out networking and meeting people and sharing what I do. And I was so concerned that people would think it was crazy, right? That they would look at my background and go, why you? Why are you doing this? It doesn't make sense. And guess what happened? When I was coming from that concern, when I was coming from that energy space, every time I would go out and share with someone what I was up to, I'd get that look, that deer in the headlights look, like, huh? And I would get the exact question I feared. Why are you doing that? I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. I was so nervous that my whole resume didn't support what I was up to, that people could feel that. And that was the question I got. And so knowing what I did and being a trained coach and a lover of transformation for a while before I finally got the courage to start my business, I paused and I asked myself, all right, why am I having this experience where every single person seems to wrinkle their nose and say they didn't understand why I was doing this? What was up with me? And that's when I really realized that I didn't understand why I was doing this. Even though I did, I had so much concern that my resume didn't add up. And in fact, I was super concerned about my resume in general, right? And protecting myself if this didn't go well and all of these things, that I was literally inviting that conversation into the space. I was a walking billboard for, I don't really know what I'm doing and it makes no sense. So if I could see you right now, I would be asking you to raise your hand and tell me who's ever been there. And, I'd like to say that I solved that and it went away forever. And in some ways it did. And I'll tell you about that in a minute. But the truth is, it can happen in a moment's notice where I get waffly, I get wavery, I forget, why the heck do I do what I do anyway? And does it really make a difference? It still happens from time to time. And that has to do with energy and the environment and other people and what I'm picking up on, which is a whole different conversation as well. But so here's what happened. When I started looking within and looking at how I was actually afraid of this, and that's why I was getting that kind of feedback. And I went through a process that I work with my clients with and teach to get really clear, where was that coming from? Why was I so worried about this? And I was able to transform that belief, and I stopped getting the question. So I shifted that concern about, does it make sense or not, and all the concern about my resume. And then I took one action, which is I actually updated my LinkedIn profile, so my professional, image to the world, to say that I was a coach. And from that moment on, I never got the question again. This is the power of owning it. Okay. So we're going to talk about 4 different areas of owning it. Because any place where we're not, any insecurity that we have is like broadcasting out there. I call it putting in the space our concern or our fear. And people aren't necessarily conscious of this or walking around going, oh, that's a secure, insecure, afraid human being, right? But they pick up on it. And so they don't fully believe you. That's when you might get a lot of people coming up to you and saying, oh, you're so inspiring, or I love what you do, but nobody's hiring you because at some level they're not fully believing it. And by the way, being in business for me was such a mirror for my own insecurities. In fact, before I started my business, I would have told you I was a confident person, right? But as I've grown, I've actually stared different insecurities in the face and realized how much they'd been ruling me, right? And how much they've been getting in the way of me completely owning who I am and what I'm about. So let's talk about this. So as I said, we're going to talk today about who you are, what you're about, why it matters, and what you do. And then we're going to talk a little bit about magic, because I'm specifically calling this owning your magic, because there is a magic that transformational leaders have. Whether you know it or not, whether you're owning it or not, there's a way in which when you fully embody who you are, which you have the tools to do as a transformational leader, right? We might just be afraid of it. There's a magic that happens. There's a magic that you put in the space that allows people to see and own their own truth just because they're in your energy field. And that's what's so beautiful about doing this work. So, should we talk about this? I'm so excited. Okay. So, you want to own who you are. Owning who you are has to do with being really comfortable in your own skin and owning all the parts of who you are. This is a journey. Okay, my business is called Aligned Entrepreneurs, and I often talk about alignment doesn't happen overnight. It's not like we get to this spot and boom, we're aligned and we never go out of alignment again. It's a process and a series of continuing to own who we are in different areas of our life. When I started my business, I went through a whole journey to own who I was and talk about my work and really be confident standing up and sharing and having clients come up to me and say things like, I don't know why, but I just know I need to work with you. And that was happening in my work. And then there's this whole area of my personal life that completely wasn't working, specifically around relationships. And it was only later that I was able to really own who I was in the realm of relationships and sexuality. And I'll tell that story at another time, but I want you to get the point that we are peeling off the layers, right? And becoming more and more in alignment with the truth of who we are. And I personally believe that's our job as human beings. This is why I'm so passionate about retreats, because they're the best way to really see our truth and continue to align with who we are. It's our job to do this, because when we really get who we are and who we're not, then we can live in the fullest expression of our unique gift in the world. So I believe we each have a seed that's planted within us, and it's there from time of birth, right? And then as we grow, life happens and we inherit these different beliefs, and they tell us who to be, who not to be, what's appropriate, what's not, how to be polite, how to be, strong, don't cry, do this, do that, make sense, be logical, shut your feelings down, da 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 da. And before we know it, we've totally lost that thread of who we are. But it's still there. It won't go away. It can't go away because it is your truth. And so our journey in this life is to actually systematically, if you have a great transformational leader in your corner, systematically, right, pull back the curtain and shift and transform these different beliefs and own more and more of who you are, so that you can walk through the world feeling very confident about all the parts of you with nothing hidden. When I started my business, one of the very first things that I was on a mission about is that no one ever has to go to work and pretend to be someone they're not ever again. Because you can be 100% who you are in your work. That's how you're going to be the best at it. And if you are building a freedom-based business, by all means, design it for all of you to be able to show up, including the spiritual side of you, the emotional side of you, the human side of you, the wicked smart side of you. So many women I work with dumb down their intelligence to, make others feel comfortable. Own all the parts of you, even that part of you that was shamed as a kid, that was abused as a kid. That is not your truth. That is not who you are. Okay. And we've got to do the work. And it takes time. It takes time. I continue to do my own work in this area. So owning who you are means you can walk through the world with your head held high. You never shy away from anyone or any opportunity for fear of what people will see. You trust your intuition to say, what's good, bad, right, or wrong for you, right? What's in alignment for you. And you really can trust your intuition in that. But there's never a place where you have to back away from something that's calling to you out of fear of who you are. And that's our job as aligned entrepreneurs and as retreat leaders, is to doing that work. Because when you're in front of the room, people will see you. And the more you let your true self be seen, the better and more magical their results will be. And I've seen it over time as I've continued to do my own work and grow and be more authentic and more vulnerable and more real and more powerful and more playful and more joyful and all of those things in front of the room. That energy transmits, and my clients feel more and more comfortable and confident in being who they are. So I'd like to share an example. This is an example of a client who really wasn't owning who she was. She actually knew what she was doing in her business. She had a really clear mission. She had a clear client base, all of these things. But she wasn't fully owning who she was because as a kid, she'd experienced really being picked on. And really specifically being picked on for things that were out of her control. Her mom wasn't really present with her and didn't take care of her in the way that she was sending her off to school, looking and feeling good. And so the kids made fun of her. And even though as an adult, she had worked her butt off to not be that little girl, right? And she learned all of the proper ways to be and all of, the tools for getting ahead, some part of her was carrying around that little girl who was picked on. And this is a beautiful, powerful, financially successful woman, still carrying this around, right? And so there were places in her business that she didn't let herself go and she didn't let herself own because she was still carrying this around, right? So she wasn't owning who she was and it just had her hold back in these little ways so that her business started to own her instead of her really owning it in her business. So this work is so important. We've got to heal that shame. We cannot walk around carrying old shame and feel really empowered in who we are. Now, if you're realizing as you're listening to this that resonates, that you're carrying shame, don't shame yourself for it. Okay? That's part of the human journey. It is our journey in this life. There's nothing wrong, nothing's broken. And that's your next work, right? Is owning who you are. The next piece of owning it is owning what you're about. Okay. Now, I personally, and this has to do with that seed of a purpose that I believe is planted in each of us. I personally believe what you're about is different than what you do in your business. This is nuanced, but it's different. So what you're about has to do with what you care about, what matters to you, What is the thing that is the problem or issue? And I say that in quotes because there are no problems, only opportunities for growth. But there is something that you've experienced in life that you didn't love, that you would love it if other people didn't have to experience that, right? And that drives what you're about in the world. So I teach what I call the clarity point. And this is something, it's a short statement that has to do with what you're about, or what, like Oprah likes to say, what you know for sure. And when you have this statement of what you know for sure, this pertains to your business. It influences what you do in your business, but it also influences who you be in life, right? It's like, what is the thing you're about in life, right? And you want people to know this about you, because then when they meet potential clients, they can go, ooh, right? My friend is about this. I need to connect you. And it's a really easy sense of connection. Now, the clarity point is a short statement. It's a declaration, and it's something that helps you discern who your right audience is. Okay. So when I first started my business, my clarity point, I didn't call it this then, but it was like my mantra that I kept in my mind that kept reminding me that I was on the right track, that I actually could make a difference, that there was something that really mattered. And my statement was, who you're being is more important than what you're doing. That was the core statement that got me out of bed, that had me know how to interact with people when I went networking and I was totally petrified. That had me know that I could really serve a client even if they were further ahead of me in business and I wasn't really sure the details of what they were doing. I knew I could support them in getting really clear about who they were being. And so that focus and that belief in that truth fueled me to where when I would stand up and share what I do, even if I didn't have the perfect words about what I do, people could feel what I was about. Okay. And my clarity point has evolved a couple times over time, and I teach about this in my course. But what you want to really think about, what's most helpful for you, is to really tune into what is that change you want to see in the world. Okay. And for most people, they have a quick answer to that. And I'm going to ask you to dig a little deeper. And the exercise I give is so simple, where you have that initial statement like, I would love for people to feel free to be themselves in the world. Okay, that's something that I believe. And then the exercise is you'd write that statement at the top of your paper, and underneath it, you're going to write so that blank. And fill in the blank. Like, why is it important to you that people are free to be themselves? So that they are fully self-expressed. So that, and you're going to keep doing this until you get to something that really moves you. So that nobody's jealous of someone else. So that nobody feels the need to judge or bully someone else. So that it's a safe place for people to walk through life. So that, and you're going to continue in that way. And at some point, you're going to hit something that makes you emotional, that makes you really resonate. And when you hit that, that's a clue to your clarity point. And you might notice that that's actually going to help you to decide who's your right client. So in my example of who you're being is more important than what you're doing, I could see when someone was really awesome, yet their energy was off, right? Like who they were being didn't match with how they were talking about themselves. And if I noticed that, I knew I could be of service to that person. Another clarity point that I have that as my business evolved is you have to let yourself be seen, right? In other words, something I discovered after working with clients over the years is that clients would put up barriers, and I would put up barriers, right? It's like, well, nobody understands me, nobody sees me, nobody gets me. Well, guess what? We have to take the barrier down and let ourselves be seen. And so with that clarity point, I could really tell when someone was hiding out. They weren't being fully truthful about who they are. They were shying away from being their powerful self. And that helped me identify, again, who are the right people I can serve in this audience. And that actually led me to retreat leaders, because guess what? To powerfully lead a retreat, you got to be seen. Totally. Okay. So I want you to do that exercise if you're not clear about what you're about. And remember, this has to do with your why. If you've engaged in any of Simon Sinek's work, it's that work. It's like why you do what you do, and the magic that you have, right? The magic that you have comes from what matters to you. For me, because this is my commitment, even though it's my work and I do lots of things for fun, and I'm incorporating more and more fun in my life, actually, recently, I'm still about the same thing, right? I'm still on a similar mission around, and today that I don't have the exact statement, but it's really around working with women to own their influence in the world. And specifically, I call it the rich skills, right-brained, intuitive, connected, and heart-centered. Really specifically having women with those skills, which they were referred to as the soft skills in my corporate job that I needed to tone down. That was my coaching I got. I'm really about working with women with the rich skills to have influence on the planet and to really make more money with those skills, to have more influence with those skills. So that's what mine's about today, is really owning your influence as a rich entrepreneur. What's your clarity point? Right? What is the thing that really matters to you? What is that shift that you want to see happen with your clients and really with yourself? It should also resonate with you. It should light you up. It should inspire you to want to be that even more. So for me, owning my rich influence, right? Owning all the parts of me, my intuitive, my creative, my quirky, my woo-woo, my feeling, my heart, my emotions, my compassion, owning all of that as a business owner, rather than, putting on the suit and pretending to be the more masculine model, that lights me up. That's a challenge for me personally to be more of that. And when it's a challenge for you personally, you're going to be fully engaged, and people around you are going to feel that, and they're going to want to get on your bus, as I say. So own who you are, own what you're about. Now we got to own what you do. Own what you do. And I can't tell you how many brilliant, talented, highly certified entrepreneurs that I've worked with who get scope creep. Okay. In corporate, that's what we would call it when your project starts to, get outside of the realm of your influence. Okay. We get scope creep, which means we don't own what we do and trust that it's enough. And so we start doing other things. Well, maybe I'll add this on, or I'll do this extra session for a client, or I will add on this thing that I'll do that's totally different than what I sold, because they need it, right? Our compassion leads us here, and we start doing work outside of our genius. Some of this has to do with old programming of like, I have to work hard to make money, internalized guilt around making great money, doing work you actually love that's easy for you. And so we create extra work, but it goes outside of our genius. So you want to really own what you do. And a lot of people who are coaches and healers or have a lot of different techniques in their toolkit, which by the way, make really amazing retreat leaders, have a lot of trouble talking about what they do in a way that makes people want to lean in, because they're talking about what they do in terms of a modality. Right? I just went to a workshop recently in my local community with someone who has a specific modality that she markets with. And I've seen her do workshops at our yoga studio before. And And, I'm kind of a marketing snob. So I was like, oh, I don't know. She may not know what she's doing because her marketing's not very good. But something resonated about her. So I went to this workshop, and afterward, I was just talking with her a little bit about her marketing. And all of her marketing is modalities. So it's coming to a workshop about this. She specifically does something called family constellation therapy. So it's a family constellation workshop. And then she does another one that's dance and art, which is the one I went to, which she called embodied expression. So it was a little, more outcome based, which was awesome. But nobody really walks around going, oh, I really want a family constellation, right? Like they don't even know what it means. It might be intriguing, but it's also kind of like, well, I don't even know what this is. Why would I schedule my life to be here, right? So for her, the advice I did give her and would give her is to really own what you do in a way that your client can hear it, right? This is the transformation that my work facilitates. And then you can follow it up with, here's how I do it. And you want it to be really clear and specific. And I know the temptation, I wrestle with it within myself too, of wanting to serve everybody, right? And knowing that, oh my gosh, like for me, this work of transformation is so amazing. Like I could make a retreat for everything and I would be so excited about it. But you want to really own what you do in a way that's really specific and clear so people get to know, like, and trust you, and they can lean in to the work that you do. If it's too broad, they won't lean in because it won't feel like it's speaking to them. And if it's too focused on your modality, it's hard for people to connect with. So you really want to own what you do. Don't try to do all the other things that will only confuse people. If you want to know how I do that, go and listen to the Retreat and Grow Rich Business System episode, because I share my recommendations for how to actually do that. And then actually in the next episode, I'm going to talk about marketing and selling transformation. So I've got some clues in other places for you on that. But you want to know what you do, okay? And then the last piece is you want to own why your work matters. So what you're about has to do with why it matters to you, but you also want to own why it matters to your clients and why it matters in general. So many people are delivering brilliant work. I'm just thinking of this woman who ran this workshop, and they aren't owning why this work matters in the bigger picture. What is the impact that it has in your client's life? What is the impact that it has on society when more and more people start making the transformations that you offer? It's huge. It's really huge. And you can't undervalue that. So inherent in owning why your work matters is owning that it has value. So if you know your work matters so much, I can't tell you how many people I've worked with that I've seen just in tears of emotion and passion over the work they do and why it's so important. And then they turn around and put a $100 price tag on it and can't even imagine how anyone would ever pay more for it. Even though this work makes their heart sing, it makes them well up with emotion to think about it, they can't imagine anyone actually paying for it. So when you own that it matters, you actually get really feisty and fiery about this, and you start to value your work commensurate with the transformation it makes happen in your client's life and the ripple effect of that work. That work, transformation done well, is not like an addictive habit that we have to get a fix of all the time. Now, I'm continually in the conversation and continually growing because it is my work. Yet, true transformation is permanent. So if your program offers people shifts in their core fundamental beliefs such that they show up with different energy, they behave differently, and they get different outcomes, and they get to hold that truth for the rest of their life, like, what is that worth? That matters. That matters. Okay. And I'm going to share an example. I write about this in my book, actually, about a graphic designer I worked with who was charging about $65 an hour for her work and was taking all kinds of different projects. Now, $65 an hour might seem okay, right? And it's not bad, but she's really talented. And she was very busy and kind of scattered, and a lot of things were random in the way she was working, because she might take one client to do a brochure one day and another client to do a website and a different client to like format and move one thing from here to here. And like, so she had all these different projects. She was feeling very bogged down by like paperwork and invoicing. Sometimes she wouldn't even invoice because it seemed like more trouble than the $65. And so, in a lot of ways it wasn't working. And so as we began to look at this own it stage for her and look at her story and her background and, what was important to her, what had shaped her as a kid, what brought her into the world of design, and what it was about for her, why it mattered. And one of the things we discovered is that growing up, she had been dyslexic. And as a kid, she had a lot of trouble communicating because of this, and especially communicating in words, right? Which is why she'd gravitated toward the arts and graphics and that type of work, because she could communicate really well visually. And so when we could tune into that pain she felt as a kid and not being able to communicate, and imagine clients who maybe were having trouble communicating visually, right? Who their visuals really mattered to them, and yet they weren't able to put into words what they even wanted, let alone create a visual, right? Now she could start to see how transformational her work was, because she was amazing at being very patient with people while they tried to communicate, at being able to pull out of them what they wanted to say, of being able to actually intuit a lot of communication as a survival mechanism. And she was able to turn that into beautiful graphics. So when she could really tune into this, why it matters beyond just the dollars per hour, she could really own the value of that work and immediately started charging more, starting with $6,000 and up for her packages. So the transformation happened very quickly once she was able to own it. So that's my invitation to you. Will you own it? Our businesses are always growing. We are always growing, especially if you're here listening to this. You're in the world of transformation. Growth is like a foundation for you. It's a part of your commitment. And so you're gonna pivot, you're gonna shift, you'll learn more about yourself, you'll outgrow your why, you'll have to come up with a new, why you do what you do or what you're about, and this will happen. And you continually want to check in with yourself to ask yourself, am I owning it? If you launch a marketing campaign and it falls flat, you want to ask yourself, what am I not owning about this? If something you used to do and got results doesn't get results anymore. Sure, there could be something like Facebook changed its algorithm, but there also could be something going on for you energetically and how you're owning it. And so you want to ask, am I feeling really confident about who I am? Am I clear what I'm about at this level of business? Does it still resonate and ring true? Am I clear about what I do? Or have I allowed scope creep to happen and it's gotten fuzzy? And am I clear why it matters? And am I charging appropriately for the work that I do? I'm a big advocate of desire-based pricing. When you're clear about who you are and all of these things, you're also clear what you want and what you're building. And you price accordingly. And you don't hesitate. Right? You just trust that what Spirit's calling within you to do is possible financially. And that's, you've got to own why your work matters so you can have the numbers add up. So that's my lesson in owning it. And I want to come back to owning your magic. Okay. So when you're walking through life, really clear about who you are, what you do, why you do it, there is a certain energy you hold. That clarity is so magnetic. It's so beautiful. Because if you look around the world, it's so chaotic, right? There's so many opportunities coming at us all the time. And people in general are very unclear, very scattered, very unfocused, having a hard time prioritizing. So if you can really do the work to own it and be clear who you are, what you're about, why you do what you do, why it matters, people will feel that and they'll be just drawn to you, right? Clarity is valuable because it's rare. Clarity holds magic. People, when they get near you, when they come to your retreat, when they're in your presence, they will find themselves clear simply because they're in your energy field. And I have this happen all the time. Like before the retreat even starts, before I've taught anything, before we've had any experience, people have clarity that they haven't had in months, even years, just from being in the room with me. Because I'm constantly doing my own work of alignment. And it's 100% important to me. So I invite you to take on that it's also really important to you. And that doing all the stuff, like doing a Facebook Live or throwing up an ad or creating a freebie or whatever the stuff is, if it's not coming from a place of clarity, it's going to come across as fuzzy. Now, that doesn't mean wait. It doesn't mean procrastinate. Okay, sometimes we have to do it fuzzy in order to own it. Sometimes we have to put it out there, like we can't quite see where we are in our level of owning it, and we have to put it out there and get results in order to have that mirror to see where we even are, and that's totally okay. Be willing to put it out there. Be willing to fail. Be willing to get feedback about where you're unclear. If a lot of people rush in and start giving you advice and suggestions, all that means is you're not clear. Okay? That's all it means. Go back within. Take the feedback and go back within. But do not allow other people to tell you how you should be. You got to ensure that alignment because they might, and it could work for the short term, but it'll take a toll on your constitution if you're operating in a way that's inconsistent with the truth of who you are. So, entrepreneur, go out there and own it. Own it in your marketing, own it in your conversations, own it in your personal life, and own it in your own retreat. This is Darla LeDoux of Aligned Entrepreneurs, and thanks for being here. I'll be with you again soon. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Retreat and Grow Rich, the podcast. If so, please share your experience and spread the word. Also, please subscribe over on iTunes and leave us a fabulous review. It makes a big difference in helping to get the word out. And you can join me in my mission to normalize transformation on the planet, one intimate retreat at a time. You can find show notes from this and all of our episodes over at alignedentrepreneurs.com/podcast. If you'd like to understand the inner workings of my retreat-based business model and build your confidence in your retreat dreams, you can grab my book, Retreat and Grow Rich, over on Amazon. It's the entrepreneur's guide to powerful, profitable retreats. If you've been wanting to incorporate transformational retreats into your fabulous business model, but you're not quite sure where to start, hop on over to retreatleaderquiz.com. In this short 10-question quiz, you will receive your personalized results, one of 6 retreat leader archetypes that will show you what your strengths are as a retreat leader, the pitfalls to look out for, and even give you a sample agenda that you can take and make your own. Again, that's at retreatleaderquiz.com.